And there is a pre-performance discussion. I encourage you all to come back for that as well, because we'll have a different group of people up here to talk and listen to. David will be moderating again. David Hochoy here, Artistic Director of Dance Kaleidoscope. Thank you very much for being here. Yes. And it is really a pleasure that we as the Butler Arts Center are able to present Paul Taylor Dance Company to our community. And this evening to have members of the company here to tell us a little bit of their story and open it up for Q&A in the next hour. So thank you very much for coming, and I'll turn it over to David.
Thanks, James. Can you hear me? I don't feel like it's on. Now it's on. Hi, everybody. So thank you so much for coming tonight. It was really, really lovely to see you all here and such a nice crowd. So these beautiful people are the dancers from the Paul Taylor Dance Company. And we're going to hear a little bit about their lives and their training and what it's like to be in the Paul Taylor's Company and what it's like to work with Paul Taylor. So I'd like you to just introduce yourselves, first of all, and tell them where you are and how old you are, and where you're from, and how long you've been dancing with Paul.
Okay. Hi everyone. Hi, my name is James Sampson. Not too far away. I grew up in Jefferson City, Missouri. Born and raised there. I actually next week will be my 17th anniversary with the company, and then in about a week and a half will be my 43rd birthday. So. A lot happening this week.
Big week for James.
Yes, big week for me.
My name is Iran Buggy, and I grew up in Orlando, Florida. And I've been with the company for almost 13 years now, and I am 35 this year.
Oh. I have my own. So do you.
I'll keep this one.
Oh, okay. My name's Rob Kleinendorst, and I grew up in Roseville, Minnesota. Went to school at Luther College, if anybody's heard of that. I don't know. This is between the second company and the main company. I've been with Paul for 20 years, and in about 3 weeks I turned 45.
3 weeks? Okay, I'll get you a birthday present. Hi, I'm Lee Duvenak. I'm originally from just outside Fort Worth, Texas. I went to school at SMU in Dallas. I just finished, I was with the second company for 5 years, and I'm in the middle of my first year with a senior company, and I just turned 30 in December.
All right, thank you so much. So, you know, the interesting thing, you all are, there are a lot of you here who are in the dance department training, and especially these two people here, right? And I'm sure what's really, really interesting is that everybody has a different path and a different way to get to where they are today. So now I'd like the dancers to tell us how they got, first of all, interested in modern dance, and how they became interested in working with Mr. Taylor.
Okay, I guess so. I'm first in line. I didn't have modern dance until I got to college. I didn't really start studying dance until then. My teachers really kind of shed the light on Paul Taylor, and we ended up seeing a lot of videos of his work. And the Paul Taylor men are at that time when I was in college were very tall and athletic looking, and my teachers were like, you should go out for Paul Taylor. Like, you kind of remind us of what we're used to seeing with the men that come from that company. So after college, I went to New York and just started taking class. They have a class every morning from 10 to 11:30, and just absolutely loved it. I really, really loved it. So I'm glad my teachers kind of forced me to go that way. And then I got a job with Charleston Ballet Theater. I left and went there for 2 years and danced down in South Carolina, and then went back and started studying with Paul again for about a year and a half until it was then 2001 I got in the company. And Susan McGuire was actually one of my very first teachers. She was completely fierce. You were very intimidated. she was there all week long, which we don't have anymore. We don't have teachers that are there teaching consistently from Monday through Friday. But she would start on Monday. You better get your butt in there on Monday, because every day after that would get harder and harder, progressing on what she had started with on Monday. So if you even come in on Wednesday, you're just like, oh my God, you know, and she had her eye on everyone. But wow, did I learn a lot from her. And she was an amazing teacher, and she really had such great things to say about the movement, and the way she taught it was really fabulous. And Paul would come in and watch all of us take class like toward the last half hour. So you had to be on your game. It was very fantastic. It was great. So yeah, she was my inspiration, and she helped me kind of move forward into the company when I got in. So it was great.
I had sort of like a strict ballet training when I was little. I grew up at the it's called the Orlando Ballet now. It was called Southern Ballet Theater when I was little. And it had sort of, you know, that bunhead Baganova like training. We were allowed to take modern dance once we got like a few levels into ballet. And I was really, really lucky. I think that I had a really great modern dance teacher when I was little. She taught us Horton. So I always really liked modern dance, but when I was really young, I kind of like wanted to be a ballerina first. I sort of had in my head that modern dancers' careers could last longer than ballet careers. So I was like, I'll try ballet first, and then maybe I'll do modern later. In college, I think is where many people get most of their exposure to modern dance. I think that's where the greatest modern dance training is. So I was really lucky. I had a woman named Peggy Lyman, who I think was Susan's roommate when they were in Graham together. It was my Graham teacher, and we had another woman who did sort of more Lamone-based, Taylor-based, you know, mishmash of styles, and both of them pointed me towards Taylor as well. They thought that I looked like a Taylor dancer, moved like a Taylor dancer, and I went for an intensive. Susan was the director of the intensives at the time, and I totally fell in love with the movement. And yeah, the rest was history. I sort of hoped to get into the company. I think I wrote my dad an email when I was graduating college and was like, I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to try to get a job and I'm going to take class at Taylor every day and maybe I'll get into Taylor too. And I was I auditioned for Taylor too, I didn't get it. And then an audition came up just a few months after I graduated, and I was really, really lucky that Paul picked me then, so.
I feel like we're playing 6 Degrees of Susan McGuire.
What's your connection?
We should phone her and tell her are your
Yeah,
ears
okay.
burning, Susan?
She was my director in Taylor too shortly for a while, but no, I grew up actually not dancing at all. I played sports. Played football. I grew up in Minnesota, so I played hockey my whole life. I played rugby when I went to college. But I was also singing and doing theater on the side. So I actually went to college to be a vocal major, and I was going to do musical theater. And then after getting my head kicked in about 3 times my freshman year playing rugby, I quit doing that. Anyways, yeah, I started dancing. I started taking dance classes when I was a sophomore in college, I think, because I figured I should learn how to dance since I was doing musical theater, and I just loved it. So I kept my vocal major and picked up a dance major, but I knew I was going to be a dancer instead. So, and just like these guys, I don't know about Lee, but the previous 2, somebody told me, hey, you look like a Taylor dancer. So they sent me to a Taylor intensive, and I fell in love with it and moved to New York. And maybe we'll get more into this later, but you know, I moved with like $1,000 in my checking account, moved in with strangers, didn't have a job, lived off of like day-old bakery stuff, and you know, instant potatoes for a while, and finally got into Taylor 2 in 1998, and then was with them for 2 years, and then I got into the main company in 2000, and I've been with them ever since. So.
I was a competition jazz dancer growing up since I was 8. thumbs. And I went to college, of course, and that's where we had very intense Gram training, and we had 2 Gram teachers, and that was the only modern I was going to get. And then one of them retired, and they brought in Ruth Andrian, who now runs Taylor 2, to teach for a semester, and she said Cloven Kingdom, which is the opening work for tomorrow night's program. And far and away, that was my favorite thing that I ever got to perform in college. It was so hard, but also I loved how dark it was. I love how elegant it was, but at the same time, it was like odd, and I don't know. There was something about it that I was just obsessed with. And when I graduated from SMU, I moved up to the city and started taking classes. They had just opened the kids classes at the studio, so they needed somebody to work the front desk, and I was like, I'll do it, because I got free class, and I was like, score. So then I didn't have to pay every morning at 10 a.m. So I think that's how most people got to know me, was because I would sit at the front desk as they were like leaving work at 5, and I'd be like, I'm checking the kids in, hi. And then, yeah, I think, after 2 years studying at the school, Paul hired me for Taylor 2.
Thank you, dancers. So, so the next question I'd like to ask you, and then I'll open it to the floor for a few minutes, and that is, you are very fortunate in that you are working with one of the greatest choreographers alive today, and not very, very many dancers get a chance to do that. So what I would like to ask you is, just give us a little story about one of your favorite moments about working with Paul. This doesn't have to be.
I'll go. I've been thinking about this one lately, actually, because we're bringing a dance back this season called Banquet of Vultures, which was the first dance Paul made when I got into the company, and the first 2/3 of it, literally I like run in from the third ring to what we call Cloven, but it's sort of like quarter on stage, and then I run out the other third wing, and then I cross over, and then I do it again. And it was like day 4, and I was hired on Sunday, and I started on Monday, which is highly unusual. Normally, the company auditions sort of a few months before somebody needs to join. So I was so like deer in headlights, like nobody knew who I was. I had no one had any expectations of me. I didn't know what I was gonna be doing, and like I showed up, and they're like, "You're in the new dance," and I was just like, "Ah." So I did literally run, and then he made like a trio or something. So it was like the 4th day I got to run, and then I got to leap over James and Sean on the floor, and Paul said something to me that day, like, "You thought you were gonna dance when you got in this company." So that was like my first fun memory of Paul. I did get to dance eventually in the day.
I'll tell you 3 really fast ones that were just, and it's gonna sound like it's horrible working for him, but these are, you look back and laugh now. One of them, he hired me into Taylor 2, and he said, and you'll hear all of our Paul Taylor impersonations, but he's got this very like soft, slightly southern accented voice that he uses, and he said, "Well, do you want the job?" And I said, "Of course." And he goes, You just gotten so much better. When you got here, you could barely walk." He was right. I mean, I'd been dancing for like all of 2 years when I showed up in New York. But another good one is we were doing a dance called Airs, and he wanted us to point our feet in these sautés, and he said, "You gotta really point your feet. Julie's pointing her foot, and Rob, he's doing the best with what he's got." So that was a good one. And the last one, which was really great, we were doing a dance called Dandelion Wine, and he really likes gestures to be, so if I'm going to touch Lee's shoulder on stage, he doesn't want you to do that. He wants you to, just so you can see it. It's always supposed to be a little thing. And we ran this little section, I don't know how many times. and I kept forgetting to lift my hand. And he finally came up to me and he hit me pretty hard on my head. And he went, and I was like, ow. And he's like, is anybody in there? So those are all fun times. But he's great. He's very nice and complimentary as well.
I digress. I can't compete with that. I mean, just the best time I had working with him, one of them was with Three Dubious Memories. I had one of the lead roles there. And just every day, it was a Creative Domain. It's a movie, a documentary that we made. And it was really fun. I got to talk with him and be one-on-one with him a lot. And I had to do this handstand. I had to push up into a handstand and let my feet fall over and then kind of push up and roll forward. And
Show it.
I was like, yeah, right. I have since changed it because I don't want to do that anymore. I simply do a handstand. I can still do that, but then I just do a forward roll out of it. The arch back is for gymnasts, and I'm not that anymore. But I had to have him help me have my legs fall forward, and he put his hand behind my back, and I was like, "Thank you, Paul. That's all I needed. Thank you very much." You know, because it was a very hard thing to do. But it was that experience was great. I don't really have very many funny stories. I know a lot of them of other people, but not too many of my own.
All right. So I usually save this question for last, but I think this is a good point to ask this question, and it'll force you to think a little bit, guys. So what I would like to ask you is, what is the thing that you love the most about your work? What is the most inspiring thing, or what is the thing that brings you the most joy? And what is the thing that you hate the most, and what is the thing that is the most challenging thing about your job?
I hate changing my clothes. We have to change our clothes so much. Like, you put on clothes to get on the subway, and then you get to the studio, and you have to put on dance clothes, and then you put warm-ups on top of it, but then you have to take the warm-ups off when you're dancing for Paul. And then when you have to go to the bathroom, you have to take off your sweater, and take off your unitard, and take off your underwear. And then at the end of the day, you have to put your street clothes back on. And then when it's a show, you've got your show clothes, you've got your rehearsal clothes, you've got 3 costumes, and then you put your real clothes back on. If I could not change my clothes again, that would be great. That's the worst part of my job. And the best part, one of the things that drew me to Paul, or I don't know if I knew this about Paul's work before I got in the company, but definitely something that is very satisfying about Paul's work is sort of the like really human connection that you have on stage with each other. I think he does romantic duets, but just any kind of relationship, even friendship relationships. He does relationships so beautifully, and unlike ballet, like I don't see a lot of ballet actually, and I saw some once I was in the company for many years and sort of had really like immersed myself in Paul's work, and then I was just like, oh God, they're just like, the man is behind the woman, they're both facing the audience, and there's like no connection between them. Like, it's all just like tricks and like showing off for the audience. Whereas like in Paul's work, you're very like face to face with each other, making eye contact. It's about an intimate experience that you're having on stage with this other human being. I'm like gesturing to Rob because I dance with him a lot. But that it's really, really special, and it's like sort of a magical moment that you can't really have anywhere else. And I think it's something special about Paul's work in particular, is sort of that very human aspect of it that we get to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll second that. It's a very good thing to say. And I think one of the reasons that happens is because Paul hates having mirrors in the studio, so we don't rehearse with any mirrors. There's nothing that we can look into to take our focus away from who we're dancing with. I think it's so smart. And I know probably all of us do this when we teach master classes on the road. If there's a studio we're in and it has mirrors on one side, they usually have curtains. Close them, either that or you turn them to face the windows so they can experience a Paul Taylor class the way we do. And it's that human connection. It's having that sixth sense of body awareness around you. And in that sense, when you transfer that to stage, it becomes so much more personal, and it actually reads the audience very well, and they can connect with you more. So, I mean, that's definitely one of the things I love about Paul's work. And it's great then because, you know, we transfer roles sometimes, and you can have that experience with someone else, and you can teach them like what you've learned through like this emotional sense and having this connection without worrying about all these other distractions around you. It's really great. I don't think a lot of people really understand that, but I'm so glad we do, and I hope it reads the audience. I think it really does. And with Paul's work, you know, it's kind of more about dance. You really learn a lot about yourself, just the way, you know, and it's small things. You don't realize it until later on in life or a few years later about, you know, how he knows a lot about you, sometimes more than you know about yourself, and he'll really put those demands on you and test you in a way that makes you think deeply about what you're doing and how you react with people on stage. Yeah, it's really wonderful. What was the thing that I hate? I know I was trying to, well, I know it's kind of, well, yeah. There's certain dances that you do in the company where you kind of stay in the same role for years and years, and after 17 years being in one role is like, oh my gosh, seriously? I mean, someone, please. But it was, you know, it's just those rehearsals, you know. I mean, you know the piece, the back of your hand, you could do it in your sleep, but you have to rehearse it for new people and just to get it ready for, you know, for the stage. And I could definitely live without doing that kind of stuff over and over.
I think because I'm one of the newest people in the company right now, what I hate are videos. Because obviously we don't have somebody staging the work, so I'm kind of like, here are 3, 4, 5, 6 different versions of the same dance. Study it, know your part, and come in ready to go. And invariably, it's like I can study the entire time that I have off from work, and I will never know all the details and never be able to embody it like the person before me was. And you know, my partner's going like, "Are you really gonna do it like that?" I'm like, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I won't. I'm sorry." So, but I mean, it's the nature of the beast. Is I need to learn it as fast as possible to go into the dance, and the more times I get to actually do it, then the better it will be. But yeah, versionitis is a really hard thing, and I sometimes think about the dancers like 30 years from now who will have even more versions of that, and they'll be like, well, Rob did this in 2013, and then this guy did it in 1995. So that is just not one of my favorite things to deal with. It's better once you get the dance in you. But my favorite thing is just how go for broke this work is. It's being able to, there's always that point in the dance where you're kind of like, is this gonna work or isn't it? In Promethean, you'll see it tomorrow. It's like at one point, all the couples are on stage, the girl's in your arm, and you have to throw her up and kind of catch her just above your head. And it's always that moment where the music like drops out and you're like, is it gonna work? And I don't know, I guess I'm like one of those adrenaline junkies that really likes that. Or like Esplanade and you're doing the baseball slide and you're just kind of like, let's just barrel down on stage and do it as big as possible and see if I can get a gasp or like a really bad bruise on the side of me. So yeah, that's what I like about it.
I think what I like in particular about Paul's work is the versatility in it. You do feel like on a certain evening like you're dancing 3 different choreographers, which is amazing. And you'll get a little bit of that tomorrow. Cloven is very dark, but it also has some light things, but it's very physical and dark and ugly. And then Eventide is this gorgeous, beautiful relationship piece. And then Promethean is very sort of just technical. It's dancing. Lots of jetés, lots of turns, lots of lifts, lots of things. So you get to do all these different things in one night. So you don't have to go. And of course, what they said too, it's all very dramatic and sort of human and driven that way, which appeals to my sort of theater background a little bit. So that's wonderful. I guess 2 things I don't like is being 45. I'm in pain all the time. I'm in pain all the time, a lot. So, as you get older, it gets harder and harder to, stay pain-free and stay warm. And, I wake up in the morning and, oh boy, it's not pretty. But then the other thing that I don't like about the job is that I have 2 kids and I have to be away from them when I'm on the road. So, aww. But
How old are they?
I have a 4-year-old girl and I have a 1.5-year-old boy. So.
Congratulations.
Super cute.
All right. So actually, at this point, what I would like to do is I'll still ask some other questions of the dancers, but if you all have any questions that you'd like to ask at this point, please feel free to. Anybody want to ask a question?
Do you ever forget the audience is there?
Well, yeah, kind of. It's really hard to see the audience most of the times because it's so dark out there. You don't even want to try, otherwise you'll lose concentration. Yeah, I mean, I think in the heat of the moment, sometimes you definitely forget they're there, and I think as professionals, we don't make contact with anyone in the audience, because that just breaks everything, and then you lose the connection, and I don't know, it's just something weird about that, I find. Yeah.
I think the best performances are the ones where you forget the audience. But it's sometimes it's hard to do. Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, and we get to theaters where, the audience, like you're in the front row. I mean, you're literally right there. They're small, But, it's a different experience. It's kind of fun, too.
Someone else wants to ask another question?
You were talking about doing this work in your 45-year-old body. And I'm wondering if you were I'm an older dancer myself. I'm going to be turning 40 this year. And I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit more about that, because it's also unique because you're revisiting repertory. Maybe you did it at 20 and you did it 10 years later. And I'm just kind of interested about psychologically and physically how that is for you all.
Sure. The question was about dancing, as if you can't hear, as an older dancer. I mean, I've always been sort of a long warmer upper, anyways, but it's just getting longer and longer now. But it's like I just, you camp out for rock tickets. That's me at the theater the night before. I'm like in a tent doing some pliés or something. But just kidding. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I feel a little bit at this point in this, you'll see, especially in Cloven Kingdom, Lee touched on as one of the hardest pieces I've ever done, because it's the men's quartet just destroys you, and then you never get a chance to catch your breath. You're dancing the whole rest of the dance. But I feel like even at 45, like the on stage, I don't feel any worse. It's the warming up and the warming down that are awful. But obviously I'm dancing more savvy than I did when I was 28. I'm using more skill, and I'm using my skills more wisely, and I'm conserving my energy when I can, and I'm smarter about using my plie and warming up correctly and staying warm and going through my feet in a jump and all those things. So yeah, I think they sort of like balance out. You're young and your body can take a lot, and so you just give it a lot. And then when you're older, your body can't take as much, so you learn how to dance smart and still full out and crazy. And I don't take anything down a notch, so I'm gonna go out with my guns blazing. But yeah, it's an interesting study in how and like I said, it's when I'm on stage, I feel like it's all on, and then as soon as I get off, by the time I get to the subway, I'm like, I know you sat in an office all day. Please let me sit down. I'm dying here. So, but anyways, yeah.
What are each of your favorite Paul Taylor pieces to perform and why?
I know, it's a hard question.
What are your favorite Paul Taylor pieces to perform, and why? That was the question.
Yeah, I feel like this question gets asked of Taylor dancers so much, and like Rob mentioned, we love it because of its versatility. So there's always like, I have my dark piece that I love, and I have my lighter piece that I love. I think there's a piece of his from 2011 that we redid for Taylor too that I love. It's called The Uncommitted. It's about relationships and how those relationships just never seem to bond or form, and you keep on passing through partners. And that was one of the ones where, maybe it was because I did it mostly in all of my 20s, and so like sometimes your personal life would have happened, and then you're on stage and you're like looking at your partner going like so I think that one I have a special connection with. And then oh gosh, I yeah, off the top of my head I would say Esplanade, just because there's so many different tones in it, and the Bach music is incredible, and it really just kind of amps up to like once you get to section 5, you really can just let it all go. So yeah.
Esplanade, obviously, it's such a thrill. It still makes me want to puke at the end, but you're still like loving every second of it and trying to like jump into the arms of the men from as far away as I possibly can and stuff. Like they're still challenging. I almost didn't make it the last time, and now I know how far is too far. He didn't let me drop. Sunset is one of my all-time favorites. That's one dance that I have managed to forget the audience on stage. Eventide, which we're doing tomorrow, is one of my favorites. Yeah, Musical Offering. It's always hard too because there's 148 of them. I think I've danced in 70 of them. So like I'm also heavily influenced by like what we're doing right now, like the 20 that we have right now, and then you remember the ones that you're missing. You probably danced even more.
You've done 70?
Yeah. I don't know. So many. It's hard to pick. It's like asking Rob whose favorite child is. Don't do it. No.
Don't do it. Well, Esplanade, of course. One of mine is Last Look. I don't know if you guys know that piece. There's mirrors on stage. It's not a pretty piece at all. It's one of the... Esplanade was close for being one of the hardest. Cloven Kingdom, of course, is one of the hardest for the men. But this one, I don't know, I have to think about it. It might be the hardest that I've done with the role I do. There's a solo, but it's down and dirty, it's gritty, it's so visceral, and everything is very tight, which makes you kind of lose breath even more. It's
If you guys haven't seen the Dance in America with Susan in it.
Oh yeah, Susan McGuire's in that one, Dance in America. Yeah.
Find it.
And that Dance in America of the original cast with Susan everyone is one of my favorite things to watch of that generation of dancers. They were fantastic. So we always reference that video when we learn. Yeah, and David Parsons as the lead. But how hard it is so rewarding too. You're like, you get off stage, you're like, yes, I did that, and I'm still alive. Yeah, definitely. Musical Offering is one of my favorites. It's one of our longer pieces, about 40 minutes. We're doing that for our New York season. Speaking in Tongues is another one, yeah. And with these, there's just a lot of like duets and trios that happen where you have these connections with people that make it special for you on a personal level. Yeah. Go ahead.
I love Speaking in Tongues. It's a beautiful dance. It's another thing. If you guys can, a lot of these are filmed for Dance in America, and they're available at libraries and that sort of thing. Speaking in Tongues is one of them. If you can see it, it's a very long piece, and it's about sort of this fire and brimstone repressed religious community who's being repressed by this man of the cloth who's not a very good Christian. So, and the role I got to do is called the odd man out, who is sort of the outcast of the community. So it's really a beautiful dance and a beautiful role. And also there's a dance that you don't see very often, Tim, called A Field of Grass. And it's set, it's like set to Harry Nilsson songs in the 60s. They're just great, like '60s, '70s hippie songs, and the role I get to do was Patrick Corbin's original role, and he crafted just one of the most beautiful, most generous, lovely solos in the entire world to dance. And every time we bring it back, I call him and go, "Thank you for crafting that," because I get to do that now, and it's like this little gift every time. So, love it.
Someone else? Oh, yes.
So you mentioned that different theaters you have audiences very close to you and audiences very far away, and you also mentioned that when you perform, a lot of times the audience disappears. I want to know if you perform differently at different size theaters, and if there's one that you prefer.
Perform differently? No. I mean, you try and do every performance with as much gusto and passion that you have. So it's interesting you bring that up. It makes me think. Probably when you're that close is when I try to forget that you're there. Otherwise, I'll completely be distracted. But the audience loves it because they get to see the sweat fly. I mean, we're doing turns and we're sweaty and messy and just jumping and flipping all over, and they have to wear the Gallagher tarps so they don't get everything in front of them. I mean, Lincoln Center is definitely one of my favorite places to perform. Now that we're there, I guess, was this our 6th year or something? It's fantastic. I mean, just the love of the New York audience, being in that Lincoln Center area is awesome. The stage itself, everything about it is wonderful. I don't know. I mean, that's great. I like doing it all. It's kind of fun to have people that close to. I mean, you learn a lot about yourself performing when you have people and different references to the stage. So. I don't know if that answered your question.
I just have to, because it's story time, so why not tell stories? This did not happen to me, but we did, for a long time, we did this theater called Queen's Theater in the Park. You guys know in Men in Black when they go to the big globe and like he takes this spaceship, right? The cockroach is going to get this. Men in Black, anyone? Okay. Okay, so that right there is Queen's Theater in the Park, and it's this tiny, teeny tiny little theater, and we went there, and they loved us, and we were like, we don't ever want to go back, and they like tripled their price for us, so we couldn't say no, so we keep going back there. But we like it now, because it's whatever. But one of the dancers was doing a duet that it's a lot of older people who have subscriptions to the season. And it's in Queens, and
Like old Jewish grandma.
yes, and they were doing a duet for a man and a woman. So there's only one man on stage. So, and it's very quiet. It's a dance called Cascade, and this guy Patrick, who was on stage, he just hears this woman go, "Oh, I don't like him at all." So that's the fun part about being in a really intimate house is you get to. So I love that story.
How do you really feel, lady?
Yeah. So, anyways, all right.
This is for you specifically. Can you do any comments about sort of the weird parallel worlds of dance of your competition background and now being in a concert setting, either how they clashed or how it prepared you very well?
Certainly because how diverse Paul's styles can be. I mean, we generally talk about Taylor being a big style, but each of his pieces are completely different, and they're a different world that I have to approach. And when I was competing with 10 different dances a night and had to go on, and albeit those were probably all of tops 3 minutes, they were very different in each style and category that you were doing. So a little tap, a little jazz, a little lyrical. So I think in that circumstance, that's where it really benefited me to what I do now. As far as clashing, I don't know. I think sometimes the challenge that I have with a more general audience is convincing them that a slow burn is fun. So coming in to a theater and being like, you're going to see 3 separate 30-minute dances, and to stick with it and really enjoy how your relationship to the piece changes over time, rather than seeing something that happens so fast. Because competition and commercial work is so made for a faster kind of mindset. So I think that's the biggest change, clash.
Somebody over here wanted a question. Dolly?
I was curious, how often you're on the road. You talked about missing kids, kind of thing. So you're touring part of the year. You're at Lincoln Center part of the year. Then you have like downtime, summer off kind of thing, or.
So actually, that precipitates a question that I was going to ask all of you. How do you balance? One of the things you never think about when you're training to be a dancer is that when you actually eventually get into a company, and if the company tours a lot like they do, how do you balance your professional life, your personal life, and your life at home? Because one of the things that was challenging for me when I was a dancer with Martha Graham was just spending so much time away from home and coming home to an empty hotel room at night. I didn't like it after a while. So talk about that.
So we actually just got our long-term schedule for the rest of the year. So this year, I think, is a pretty balanced year for us, actually. We've had some years that have been insanely busy, and I think we just recently had a year where we literally had like 3 weeks off the entire year, which is great for the bank account, but very intense. But we have this coming up, like we've got some really fun exotic tours where we're going to South America for 3 weeks. We're going to China for another 3 or 4 weeks. There's also some domestic touring, and then we've got the rehearsal periods scattered in there as well. We typically historically we always had 2 6-week rehearsal periods a year, and that's when Paul would make a new dance. Now that we're sort of in this next phase of the company, sort of the Paul Taylor American Modern Dance phase of the company, where Paul is selecting other choreographers to set work on us for the first time. So it's sort of the first time that choreographers other than Paul have ever made work on us. This is our 3rd season doing that, I think. So now we have to have even more rehearsal, which is one of the reasons why we had this one year that was very low on the weeks off, because not just Paul was making 2 dances, but then there were 2 other people making new dances. So that's a lot of rehearsal. And those creation times are pretty intense physically a lot of the time. But that's also the time when you're in New York and you've kind of got like almost like a 9-to-5 job, like all of your non-dance friends that have got like normal jobs. So that's like your time to sort of connect with your partner, with your friends, to be in your home and sort of have a routine where you can go take class from the people that you are your mentors and that kind of thing. And then on the road is like, you have to sort of take care of your own body, and you're by yourself a lot. I mean, we are all very close, but you're not with your partner or your families. But it's also we never go out for longer than like 3 weeks normally. And so just when you're kind of sick of it, you get to go home. And I kind of say that about a lot of our schedule. It's like, just when you're sick of rehearsing, you get to go on the road and perform. And then like, just when you're sick of being away, you get to come home, and then maybe you get a few weeks off. So it's a pretty balanced lifestyle, I think, most of the time.
Anybody else want to add anything?
I would just say quickly, when I first joined Taylor 2 in the main company, this is before smartphones or anything like that. So you were literally like calling your girlfriend from your hotel room. Anyways, so you're like, what?
It was connected to the wall with a
Um,
wire.
So, but now, I mean, thank goodness, like right before I came, I FaceTimed my kids, before they went to bed. So, I mean, without that, oh my gosh, it'd be awful. I think they'd forget who I was. But, no, they wouldn't. But, yeah, I mean, no, but I guess the point is at the beginning of our careers, before we had all that stuff, FaceTime and Skype and all that stuff, it was so much harder to stay connected. And now it's kind of awesome. I mean, it helps a lot to have those things. Thanks, Apple.
Here's a question I'd like to ask you all. Tomorrow night we're going to see. We're very excited about seeing the show tomorrow night. So it's a very rare opportunity we have for us to get a kind of a personal take on the pieces. And so what I'd like to do is to go through each piece, because I think one of the most beautiful things that we can do as professional performers is to impart our love of what it is that we do, not only in dancing but in words as well, and to tell other people, wow, I just love this section because the music is just so incredible here. So I would love you to give them a little insider kind of feeling for the pieces, so when they have that information, they will look at it in a different way when they see it tomorrow. So let's start with Cloven. Is that what's opening the program?
Let's talk about Cloven.
And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to tell them what the stories or anything, just what do you love about it? What are your favorite moments, and what's fantastic about it? What is really fantastic about it?
Cloven is super physical. It's very like Betty DeYoung, who's our rehearsal mistress, who's been with Paul since the beginning of time. I think it falls into the category of a dance that she would call like the ABCs, which are like the dances that sort of codify, really exhibit the Taylor style, and I think Cloven falls into as one of those. It's so fun. It's just so dancey. It's not one that has a story. Most of Paul's dances, would say, don't have like a narrative story. They maybe impart a feeling or are commenting on society, but it's not like there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and like they all lived happily ever after kind of thing. The cool thing about Cloven is, he's sort of commenting on like fancy society and how like we as humans are sort of trying to elevate ourselves above the animal kingdom, but that we're really sort of just base animals at heart. So it kind of goes back and forth between very elegant movement and more sort of animalistic movement. The women are in ball gowns, and we are wearing these crazy headpieces and stuff, and the men are in tuxedos, but then we like go back and forth between this movement, and also the music is going back and forth between this Corelli, beautiful classical music, and then a percussion ensemble piece, which I think Paul actually, he still uses a reel-to-reel machine to play music in the studio. And he, I think, actually like sliced them together himself. Like he had the two tapes and he like cut them up and put them together. And at this point, we have performed it live. Somebody has transcribed it so that an orchestra can play it. But they're two totally separate pieces of music that were not meant to be together. But they're awesome together. So. Next dance, Eventide.
Well, no, I also want to tell them that one of the things that I love about Cloven Kingdom is that it's very, very witty, and it shows you how funny Paul Taylor can be. And if any of you have ever tried to choreograph a funny dance, it is the hardest thing in the world to do, to put humor into movement. So that's one of my favorite things about Cloven Kingdom.
It's kind of like Paul making fun of himself a little bit at times, I feel like Arden Court, there's a dance called Arden Court where I feel like Paul's just making fun of himself a little bit,
All right, let's go on to the next one.
Eventide. I'll do Eventide quick, my version of Eventide, and then let somebody else, because it's one of my favorites. Paul has said often that it's all the same couple. It's like many facets of the same relationship that he's portraying on stage. I disagree with him, which I think he doesn't mind people doing, actually, and encourages the audience always to sort of, he would never tell you what to see in his dance. So I disagree with him because Rob and I's duet is like very tragic, I think. I think it's very tragic. It's like I'm very hopeful. I think he's going to like be there for me, and he keeps leaving me.
That is tragic.
Yeah, and he really leaves me at the end of our duet. It's kind of like maybe he's got a wandering eye or whatever. And but I think maybe he's gonna fall in love with me and stay with me and give me what I want. And then the main couple that has two duets, to me, they're just like in it. They're like a really great relationship. that have been together for a very long time, and it seems to me like perhaps they've had some sort of tragedy. Maybe a child has died or something like very epically tragic. And each duet, it's like one is like she's kind of losing it and he's supporting her, and the other he's kind of losing it and she's supporting him. And I just do not believe that that couple can also be us. I don't believe that. So I think we're the only couple that can't be that couple. Maybe everyone else can be that couple, but you think so?
Well, I mean, you can either think of it as facets of the same relationship or phases of the same relationship. And maybe there was just that summer that I just had a wandering eye. And then we got together. And then we lost a baby. Thanks for that fun story. But go on.
I'm done. That's
All right, let's go on to the last piece. See, was somebody upset? We've upset somebody. It was the losing the baby comment. All right, Promethean Fire, guys.
That was the first piece that Paul did after 9/11, so a lot of people and reviewers kind of associate that one with that horrible event. Although Paul will disagree, he will never agree with you. If you say this is why you did something, he will go off on a different tangent and say, no, you're wrong, you're wrong. But he never talked about that event, but it was more about the rising and falling of humanity and events in the world. So we have like these big pileups that happen. There's a wonderful duet in the middle between two the first and third section, which includes all of us, and then there's a great duet that Iran is a part of with Michael Novak, and it's gorgeous. It's really beautiful. The lighting is wonderful. We're all in black unitards. Yeah, there's really not a storyline to it either, and it's also one of those dances that can be considered maybe the ABCs of Paul Taylor. We actually do Paul Taylor's classic back exercise in that piece, a variation of it, and it's just a lot of movement all the time. It's one of Paul's classic dances. It's, I think, one of many people's favorite dances of his. Yeah.
Great, you guys. So we're coming close to the end of our session, and they're never going to ask you this, but I'm going to ask you. We have a room full of young hopefuls. They're all studying very, very hard here. And so what would you like to tell them? And it doesn't have to be anything big, or just what would you like to tell them in terms of, you're a seasoned professional, and they're about to go out on their own, and so words of advice or encouragement?
I mean, I always say it's great to experience as much different facets of dance as you can, just to become kind of a well-rounded person and dancer in the end, because they all kind of fit together, and you can learn something about yourself by doing each thing. If you have the chance to meddle in different forms of dance, and I have to say you really have to have a passion for the art, because it can tear you apart. It's not easy, it's very hard, it's demanding, and as we've all talked about our schedules, it takes you away from your family and your home. But the passion is what we have and what we love about the dance and the art, and it gets us through every day. That's why we've been here for so long. We just love it so much. And I just wanted to kind of add to what Rob said to your question earlier. The older you get and the longer you are in this career, you have to find ways through the maturity to get through every night. Like for myself, it's just sometimes I go through a section that I couldn't even breathe. I wanted to throw up after I was done, and then 10 years later, doing the same part, I think to myself, wow, I never really took a breath during that whole phrase. And I say to myself, now I have to be more conscious as a more mature dancer to do everything to the best of my ability and still full, but take the time to think and breathe and just mature that way as a dancer, and it'll sustain you for a lot longer. Small things like that really do help.
I would just say, don't give up. Don't give up too soon. It's tough. It's like hard to be out there auditioning and freelancing and working a job and not getting paid to perform and all that stuff. But you know, dance is an art form, contrary to what I've been saying. You can't do forever, and you're gonna have a whole career after that, whatever you choose that you want to do, your second passion in life or whatever. So keep going, because
Wait,
some
I'm gonna-
people start to kind of give up at 25 and say, this isn't going to happen.
I've heard you give advice before that I liked, and I can't remember exactly. Something about there were 3 when you
Oh.
were. Yeah,
Okay, I wasn't going to say that, but
I like it. It's good.
so there's 3 reasons why you should dance for someone, and this is for me, from my experience. Either they're going to pay you money, or you really like the work, or it's going to look good on your resume. Because if you're going and doing what you're supposed to be loving, dancing, and you're going to dance for someone that is not paying you, and it doesn't really matter if they show up on your resume and you hate it, then you're going and hating what you're supposed to be loving. And a lot of people go, but at least I'm dancing. But who cares if you're dancing if you hate it? You don't want to turn your love into your hate. So you can always say, well, this is going to look good on my resume. Or I can say, they're paying me $500 to do this show, so I'm going to do it. Or you can say, gosh, I love working with this person even though I'm sewing my own costume, which happens a lot. So if none of those 3 things qualify, because there's been times when I danced where none of those things qualified and I could not wait until the show was over. And then I said, great, I just turned my passion into something drudgery. So anyways. Lee, yes.
I was just, I think this has been on my mind lately, but I think, like Rob said, when moving to New York with $1,000 in your bank account, and I think I remember how terrified I was to do that, and I recommend embracing that point in your life, because it is such a rare moment when you get to go out and discover all the possibilities that life really does have, and all the different people that you will meet, and you probably will not meet that many new people past, you know, the age of 25 or 26. But I think in doing that, you find your community within the dance community. New York, for example, is a small dance community in itself, but it's also very divided within it. You know, you'll have your ballet people, or you'll have your Taylor people, or your Graham people, or your Cunningham people, and your downtown people, and your really down people. But I think going in and finding the teachers that you love and meeting people and companies that you respect and admire is important, because getting to know those people, you establish relationships, and then they know you. I remember how wonderful it was. My first class at the studios with James. I remember talking with Rob in the dressing room and him giving me advice before auditions. So those are all things that stick out for me in my mind, because it was so daunting to move to New York from Texas, and then feeling like I had a home base in New York for the first time. So.
Yeah, and I think I could be wrong. Maybe somebody can challenge me on this, but I think you have to go to class. I think you have to go to class. I think you have to meet people. I think you can get jobs just in class. Like somebody else, another choreographer will be taking the same class, and maybe they'll see you, they'll like you, they'll ask you to do work with them. I think it is incredibly rare, although Paul Taylor has cattle call auditions, and we all went to those, and we all got our jobs there. That was not the first time he laid eyes on any of us. So I think it's super rare to get a job at a cattle call audition, despite how many of them there are that you can go to. So I think going to class, going to a variety of classes, finding a bunch of different styles, picking 1 or 2 or 3 that are like the ones that you really want to do, and then like immerse yourself in them. And then I think you stand a chance at the cattle call audition, because you'll know the style a little bit. You won't stick out like a sore thumb. You'll know what people wear to the audition, because if you're going to a Taylor audition and you wear baggy pants and sloppy clothes and you don't have hairspray and makeup on, he may not even look at you, you know, whereas if you go to a Parsons audition, you maybe want to wear a crop top, you know, like, and if you did that to Paul, again, he'd be like, what is this girl wearing? I mean, he's stopped auditions and told people that, like, he can't see their legs, why are they wearing those sweatpants? You know, and then there are companies where that would be totally acceptable at the audition. So just looking like you fit the part when you walk into those cattle call auditions, I think gives you a leg up. So I think that's my advice.
All right, dancers. Well, thank you so much. You've been very, very enlightening. Thank you for enriching our lives. Welcome to Indianapolis. I hope you have a wonderful time while you're here. We will really cheer you on tomorrow night. Thank you so much for sharing your lives with us tonight. Thank you for coming, people. Go home and get a drink.
Lay off the drinking.